after the last general election on the second Thursday of August. Accordingly, this year, the general elections will be held on Thursday, 13th August 2026. And this brings into context the discussion that we are having relating to the state of human rights in the country as we approach the given date of 13th August 2026. So in order to conduct free, fair, and credible elections, an effective electoral management system is imperative, but more so, the full protection of human rights before, during, and after the actual electoral process. And I just want now to zero in on the state of human rights during elections. As we've given an overview, elections provide citizens with the opportunity to exercise their democratic rights, either by contesting as candidates or voting for their preferred leaders. However, elections also present periods of heightened political competition and tension, which may increase the risk of human rights violations, and I know this will put our prosecutors on edge because it directly concerns the work that they would have to do. Among the rights that are the most vulnerable during the election periods are the right to life, right to personal liberty, freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment, the right to equal protection of the law, freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and association, freedom from discrimination. It also merits mention that when we look at the perspective of discrimination, over the years, there has been increased violation and exposure to violation of rights of minority and vulnerable groups, such as women, persons with disabilities, and children by extension. Violation of these identified and other rights undermines the credibility of elections and weakens the democratic legitimacy of governments that emerge from such impugned elections. Human rights violations during elections can also threaten peace, national cohesion, and democratic stability. In this vein, it is the key responsibility of the Electoral Commission to ensure that the campaign environment does not expose or subject vulnerable and minority groups to violation of their rights. As we approach the 2026 general elections, the Electoral Commission of Zambia remains a key stakeholder and primary duty bearer in ensuring that people fully exercise their right to vote together with other attendant rights. In order to support the Electoral Commission of Zambia, all institutions within the justice delivery system must strengthen coordination and collaboration and ensure that human rights are respected and promoted throughout the electoral cycle. These institutions include the Zambia Police Service, the National Prosecution Authority, the judiciary, and legal aid. In further supporting the Electoral Commission of Zambia, all players named above, included in the justice delivery system, hand in hand with the Human Rights Commission, must pay particular attention to preventing arbitrary arrests. And I know in the previous presentation we had, the role of the prosecutor has really been streamlined, and it must speak to some of these issues that need to be prevented. Unlawful detention, politically motivated investigations, selective or discriminatory enforcement of the law. Ultimately, it is the responsibility of all stakeholders to ensure that victims of human rights violations have effective remedies and access to justice. In terms of the specific role of prosecutors in safeguarding human rights during the elections, We cannot overemphasize the centrality of the role that prosecutors play in safeguarding human rights during elections. Prosecutors occupy a key position in the criminal justice system and serve as guardians of the rule of law. Their decisions determine whether criminal allegations will proceed to court and whether justice is served fairly and impartially. Again, we would get strength from the presentation that we had before, where this decision rests in the prosecutorial function and how it must be achieved with the ends of justice in mind. Prosecutorial decisions must therefore be strictly guided by evidence, legality, public interest, among some of the key considerations. Prosecutors must exercise their functions with professional independence, impartiality, and objectivity, in accordance with the guidelines on the role of prosecutors adopted by the United Nations. In this regard, prosecutors play critical roles during elections, and I'll give examples of some of these. Ensuring accountability for electoral violence. It is expected that there shall be prompt and impartial prosecution of perpetrators of electoral violence as a way of sending a strong message that impunity will not be tolerated and contributes to deterring further acts of violence within the name of elections. Safeguarding due process rights of suspects. Even where individuals are suspected of having committed electoral offenses, prosecutors must ensure that constitutional safeguards, such as the presumption of innocence, the right to bail, and the right to a fair trial, are fully respected as a way of ensuring that human rights are promoted and protected. There must be prevention of politically motivated prosecutions, and again, this has been ably spoken to in the previous presentation. Prosecutors must guard against any attempts to use criminal proceedings to silence political opponents, journalists, civil society actors, or indeed ourselves as human rights defenders. We must also address hate speech and incitement to electoral violence. Prosecutors have an important role in ensuring that hate speech, incitement to violence, and other offenses that threaten peaceful elections are addressed in accordance with the law, while also safeguarding legitimate political expression and debate. There must be the promotion of public confidence in the justice system. By acting with independence, fairness, and professionalism, prosecutors help maintain public trust in both the justice system and the electoral process itself. The National Prosecution Authority, from what I have said, therefore plays a key role in ensuring that elections take place within a framework of justice, accountability, and respect for human rights. When we come now to the Human Rights Commission itself, in preparation for the 2026 general elections, the Human Rights Commission has developed a comprehensive election preparedness plan. Some of the key interventions in this election preparedness plan include stakeholder engagement on human rights and elections. As a commission, we are already engaging with law enforcement officers, law enforcement agencies, political parties, civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, media institutions, as well as local authorities. We have deliberately not mentioned individuals, but all individuals are also welcome in terms of whatever observations they're making that touch on human rights, to get in touch with the Human Rights Commission and work in partnership. All these engagements, to our estimation, are promoting awareness on democracy, electoral rights, and peaceful political participation. Secondly, we are looking at capacity building for law enforcement officers. The Commission is conducting training throughout the country relating to human rights standards, the UN basic principles on the use of force and firearms, as well as having human rights compliant policing during elections. The Human Rights Commission, within its electoral preparedness plan, is also promoting dialogue, negotiation, and mediation. The Commission encourages political actors and other stakeholders to resolve disputes through dialogue, negotiation, mediation, rather than violence. I think in the previous presentation, we also saw how some of these decisions are left to the prosecutorial decision, and the need to also be based along the lines of encouraging dialogue, negotiation, and mediation. Within the framework of the which are in all the provincial centers of the country, and also using our very effective toll-free line 8181. I think this merits repetition. I already talked about individuals, so all individuals are free to rely on 8181, our toll-free line, as the Commission, to bring to the attention of the Human Rights Commission any human rights violations, but in particular those that touch on the electoral cycle. The Human Rights Commission is also reviving the early warning and early response system to detect potential election-related conflicts and provide early intervention. In terms of this initiative, it is a way of being proactive and not waiting to receive reports. Fifthly, within the context of the electoral preparedness, in line with the of 2024, which now empowers the Commission to institute legal proceedings on behalf of victims of human rights violations, this is a key innovation that the Commission intends to rely on as we approach the August 2026 elections. On this basis, the Commission will consider strategic public interest litigation where necessary to address election-related violations and strengthen accountability. Additionally, under the Access to Information Act, the Human Rights Commission exercises quasi-judicial powers to hear appeals against decisions of information holders and issue legally binding decisions subject to appeal to the High Court. Access to information is a key component of transparent and credible elections. In conclusion, as we all prepare for the 2026 general elections, from the different institutional and individual perspectives, it is very important to keep in mind that respect for human rights must remain a non-negotiable pillar of our democracy. The rights to vote and to contest elections are fundamental rights that must be protected to ensure free, fair, and credible elections. The Human Rights Commission stands ready to work collaboratively with government institutions, the justice delivery sector, civil society organizations, the media, political actors, as well as all the citizens in the Republic of Zambia. All these engagements are critical for ensuring that the 2026 elections are conducted in an environment characterized by transparency, inclusivity, peace, and the respect for human rights. As prosecutors, your commitment to fairness, legality, and independence will play a decisive role in ensuring that the electoral process is conducted in accordance with the rule of law and respect for human rights. I look forward to the discussions that are going to follow now, and it remains for me to thank you all very much for listening to me attentively. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. The discussion on the state of human rights will not be complete without the input of our another distinguished guest. Help me welcome to the podium Ms. Mono Lubezi, former MP for Namwala. Ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning, colleagues. Allow me to ride on the protocols already raised by the previous speakers. My names are Mono Lubezi, immediate past Member of Parliament for Namwala. I served Namwala for 10 years, from 2011 to 2021. And I was the first MP to be elected twice. They have all been first-termers. So I broke that record under UPND. I started before I go into the topic, at least you have to know my political part. Before I became an active politician, I'm a banker by profession, but I joined politics at an early age. In 1986, I joined UNIP. And in 1989, I became a card-carrying member for UNIP. For those of you who've been there, I think you remember this card. This is me under UNIP. Keep the fire blaming, keep the fire burning. And then in 1989, I joined UPND. And those who've been there from the inception of UPND, we had these cards. Fast forward. I'm representing a topic on the human rights during elections. I'll start by defining human rights. Human rights, it is the right to take part in the conduct of public affairs. And in this case, we are talking about voting, the right to stand in the elections, because those are the core democratic path for any government which believes in democracy. These rights include the right to vote, the right to stand for elections, the right to freedom from discrimination, the right to freedom of association and peaceful assembly, the right to freedom of movement, and of course media freedom, because media is important during elections. Are these fundamental rights exercised freely during elections? We are yet to hear. But from the onset, I can say no. Allow also me to admit that Zambia has successfully achieved transition of power peacefully from the inception of plural politics. Unfortunately, the pre-election period is often marred with violence, abrogation of human rights, with impunity as highlighted here below. I'll start with the right to vote. During elections, you would find that political players, political actors, and in this case cadres, because those are the most abused youth by leaders, they'll block the passage, the ways to polling stations. And the voters, most of them you find they shun, they don't go to vote. I would give an example. The first by-election UPND had was in Mazaboka, where the late Honorable Nangomba won that election. We were coming from Lusaka with our late president, Anderson Kambela Mazoka, may his soul rest in peace. When we got, for those of you who know Southern Province, when we got to the motel, we found MMD, the party which was in government then, they blocked the road. We had to leave our vehicles there. We had to walk through the maize fields to get to the other side of Mazabuka, where we were going for Elari. It shouldn't be like that. In Solwezi, it was also like that. Solwezi East, if you recall, we had 3 by-elections, Solwezi East, Solwezi West, and Solwezi Central. You'd find roads leading to polling stations are blocked, which should not be the case. Sesheke, Livingstone, it has always been the same. There's also freedom of assembly and expression. This is another right which is greatly abrogated by us political players. I would give an example of Sesheke. There's abuse of power of incumbency. The ruling party, they will always suppress other political parties. You all saw what happened in Sesheke, for those of you who follow social media and private media houses, where the permission is given to hold a rally. You start assembling there. From nowhere, the police will come and start dispersing you. And then in that process, people will be hurt. In some instances, even death. I would give an example of 2016 in Lusaka, when UPND was given a permit to have their last rally in Lusaka, in Chawama. At the last minute, that rally was cancelled. And when that rally was cancelled, in the fracas, unfortunately, the people who are supposed to protect us, and in this case the police, they never protect the opposition. They always do wrong things for the ruling party. They opened fire and killed an innocent girl, Chibulo Mapenzi. We all know about that. And to date, prosecutors, I wish when you'll be closing this conference, some of these cases, you inform the public how they were ended. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think if the police officer who put the trigger on Chibulo Mapenzi was prosecuted, to the best of my knowledge. Let me talk about the freedom of expression. In Mapatizia, you all know about Mapatizia formula. I was there. And Mapatizia formula, whenever it comes in public, people, they take it that there was violence there. Let me take this opportunity today to clear Mapatizia formula. I'm talking about freedom of expression because we expressed ourselves in Mapatizia. How did we express ourselves in Mapatizia? If you recall, our electoral system then, after voting at the polling stations, the counting was done centrally at the totaling centers. It was not done at the polling stations. But after the experience we had in Mazabuka, when there was that by-election in Mapatizia, after the demise of an MMD female MP there, we said this time around, the counting will be done from the polling stations. I was a polling agent, and that was a party position.
that we must do the counting from the polling stations. Fortunately, the ECZ, before I say fortunately, the ECZ refused. They said, we'll count from the totaling center. And then we said, in that case, if we're going to count from the totaling center, then you have to put on each van carrying the ballot boxes, they must be a UPND official. And they refused. And we stood our ground that you are going to count from the polling stations. And it was agreed. And we counted from the polling station. And that's when we started. Mapatiza formula makes it easy to win because just right from the polling station, you already know your votes. And that's how ECZ even changed to start counting from the polling stations and start giving the certificate of the election results at the polling stations. At the totaling center, they will only take the results, the boxes, with signed certificates. That was the Mapatizia formula. What am I talking about here? Freedom of expression. We expressed ourselves. Freedom of assembly, which is equally highly abrogated. I would give an example of Solwezi East when Honorable Kasonso won. I was one of the deputy campaign manager based in Shilenda, the biggest polling station, the biggest ward, the winning ward for Solwezi East. For some reason, my party used to send me to winning wards, and I used to win those wards. Whether the party will lose that election holistically, but in my ward, I always used to win. So what happened in Shilenda? On the last day, when the current president was supposed to have the last rally, they gave us permission. And remember, when you go in an election, you give out your campaign programs for fear of crashes. So we gave out our campaign program, and despite giving our campaign program, you still have to ask for permissions, and that's where it beats me. When the campaigns are open, I don't think if there's any need to start writing to the police for permits. But because of abuse of the incumbency, it's always like that. Even the Public Order Act, it doesn't say ask for permission. It says inform the law, the LIA. But we would follow and would do as political players to what we are taught what to do. We got permission for the last rally in the biggest ward in Solwezi East. The previous day, the ruling party, they had a rally at Manyama Primary School. We also got permission for the following day at Manyama Primary School. Then the following day, when our supporters started going there, we were told, you can't have it here because we've been given, we are acting on instructions, and I heard that statement, we are acting on instructions. Whose instructions? So that day, it was bad. Because when we went to the other site, still more we were followed. This is violation of freedom of assembly. We were followed, and unfortunately that day, live bullets were used. I think in one of the, you even see the cartridges. Arbitrary detention. I am one of the victims. If you saw one of the pictures there, when I was being taken on trumped-up charges that I beat up a fellow contestant from FDD, it wasn't like that. We were having our Larry in one of the wards. And in the villages, you park the vehicles along the road because you can't branch off, there are no roads. And our colleagues were passing, going to another ward. There were lots of people on the road who were coming to our meeting. And for some reason, I don't know, that is just my assumption. I think they wanted to destabilize the people who were on the road. Then it was at a bend. By the time they were turning, they found our convoy. They couldn't control the vehicles. They bashed into our convoy. And we rushed. We even offered, because it was a serious accident, they lost control and they went in the bush. We even offered to take them to the hospital. And we went to report to the police that this is what has happened. But by 13 hours, it was on news. Namala, aspiring candidate member of parliament, is on the run. Whoever finds them, please bring them to police. But we went to report to police. I even called the IG then. I said, I haven't run away. Should I come and report myself in Lusaka? Fast forward, 2 years, we were going to Namala for that case. And I can even recognize some of the prosecutors who were prosecuting me in this hall. And we hugged. Why should you arrest people even when you don't have information? The day the case was, when we went there for the ruling, that was now in 2018. Just when we arrived, I could see hoods of police from Choma. I said, okay, today we'll be arrested again. But there's a ruling. Even if they are taking us to remand, they don't need all these people. So we went in there and the judge called the case. The magistrate called the case. And the prosecutor stood up and said, we have entered a nolle. 2 years, paying lawyers. They entered a nolle. And for what I know, the courts, you can't come in the courts as police to arrest people. But immediately, the prosecutor asked for the nolle and the magistrate acknowledged. The police came in the courtroom and picked us and took us straight to remand. And they read, the following day, they took us back to court and they read the case. Exactly the same, word by word. The same charge. And the magistrate recused himself. I thank that man, his profession. We need such people in our public offices. He recused himself. He said he cannot go through the same process unless if they had changed the charge. And he said, the only thing I can do to these people is to give them bail on the same conditions. From here, release them, let them go. Another magistrate took it up with other prosecutors till the people who took us to court, I think they were exhausted. They withdrew the case. But if I'm to ask the prosecutors in this room, out of all the political violations we've seen, human rights violations, people lost their lives, people maimed, property damaged, how many have been convicted? It's a paltry percentage. I don't think if these prisons, they have people, political people, perpetrators of violence, those who've killed people. In 2021, PF provincial chairman was killed in blood coat at a polling station in Solwezi. Have we followed up that case? They were convicted. What were the charges? What were the sentences? So, in short, in my discourse, political violence is real. It's there. That was me in the van, enjoying being taken to remand. The current president in Livingston, he was incarcerated during the Livingston by-election on murder charges. The PF cadre was killed in blood court. We regret the loss of lives in these things. It shouldn't be like that. All the people who were picked from UPND, all the NMCs, all the provincial officials, including the current head of state, they were picked for murder. But who were convicted in Livingstone? A life was lost. Prosecutors. Who was convicted in Livingstone for the loss of that man? There's discrimination on women. I wish I could go on and on. They're showing me time is up. There's discrimination on women. On that same case, every 2 weeks, I had to ask for permission from Parliament so that I go and attend that case. You recall there was a time UPND MPs were suspended from Parliament because they didn't attend the official opening, which is still within their rights. Freedom of expression, it's allowed. But for me, that week, I had a written permission from the government chief whip where members of parliament get permissions when you have another matter to attend. Parliamentary business takes precedent. But when you've got a criminal case like the one I had, you must be allowed to go. I went. And then when they were suspending people who didn't attend the official opening, my name was there. Discrimination against women. And then when I came back, because I could not go to Parliament, when you are suspended, you can't step on any soils, anything to do with National Assembly and the motel. I had to use a colleague of mine, Honorable Belemu, who was off sick, and with him, he was not suspended, to rise on a point of order for me. And they raised a point of order. And they said I should go back to Parliament. But they didn't communicate with me. I didn't even hear that point of order. Me, I went to Mala Kungombezanga. There's a place we call Gulutanga, where we take animals. And there's no network there. I was suspended. And I went there. So when I came back, I heard you were supposed to have come back. I followed it up. I said I want my money because I was wrongly chased away. I've lost my sitting allowance. I lost my salary. They paid me my salary, but they didn't pay me sitting allowance. I tried to follow. I said, in the same breath, so why are you paying me my salary because I never stayed here? But they couldn't pay me to date. I tried, but they couldn't pay me. Discrimination against women. I'll be closing shortly. Discrimination against women. As a female politician, it's there. You've seen there people talking about sexual advances for adoption. It's real. It's there. In all political parties, it's there. Discrimination against women at Parliament. If you recall, there was a time I was insulted for merely asking a minister who told us when they introduced computer lessons, and my concern was for my rural constituency in Namwala. I said, there's no electricity there. You brought computer lessons. How are those kids going to write the same exam with a child at Munali, here where there's electricity? And the Minister of Education then replied and said, computer is theoretical. It's not practical. So I asked a question, Honorable Minister, if you're saying computer is theoretical, okay then, what is the next key on the keyboard before a semicolon? And he couldn't answer. But this is a person who's telling us it's theoretical. And he got annoyed because he was embarrassed. When we went for tea break, he came to my table, insulted me. I think you saw it. He called me Dorika Ulaifulila. He spilled the tea on my table. I didn't do anything. My leader of opposition, Honorable Mwimbu, told me to put it in writing to the speaker. The disciplinary committee was called. In the disciplinary committee, they are pleading with me to withdraw the case. In the meantime, the previous week, one of the opposition MPs was taken to apologize behind a mess in Parliament because he said a derogatory remark to a ruling party MP. But it is opposition. I'm talking of incumbents, of the misuse of incumbents, power of incumbents. So that day I refused and I walked out. I said, I thought you called me here to state my case. You are pleading with me to withdraw. I walked out. The following day we were in the parliament, a note was written to me by one of the presiding officers. I went there. Sexual abuse comes in. Immediately I walked in. This old man is hugging me and pecked me. I said, but we don't have this relationship. We went back to the committee. I stated what I stated. No, Honorable. You can't say that. You can't say that. Withdraw that. I said, but it happened in his office. Discrimination against women. Who's going to save us? Human rights. I'm glad they have been given powers now to start cases for prosecution. But in all what I went through, human rights was not there. Because I was a member of parliament in the opposition, my rights were being abrogated as a member of parliament. A human right, it is a duty, it's not an option. It is a duty, it's not an option. And I look forward to a free and fair election this year. Going by the by-elections we've seen, we saw what happened in Chawama. It was calm. Everywhere, at least rating the current government to where we are in the by-elections, I think this year's general elections will be free and fair. My passion to join politics, ladies and gentlemen, it is because of the vulnerable. Who I thought if I go on that platform, I'll try to make that their basic needs are met, because that is a right, it's not an option. I thank you.
Thank you so much to our two distinguished speakers who will take on interventions in form of comments, contributions, recommendations. I'm seeing a hand to my right. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very interesting topic, the state of human rights during election period. And interventions, I see a hand to my right. Ushers, kindly help with the microphone.
Good morning, madam. My full name is Charobed, a prosecutor from Zambia Chambers. You are one of the politicians who have passed through a lot of situations. Now, since you have passed all these problems and you have seen the impact in our soil of Zambia, what are your plans so that we can put Zambia on the map to remove all these bad behaviors from politicians, since you are one of the pioneers in politics?
We'll take up two more questions before our presenters can ably respond to the questions.
Good morning, madam. I'm Dexter Shekan from Nkema, a public prosecutor from Nkema. My question is, how often or effective do you monitor human rights violations from remote areas or rural areas? Or is it only those that are covered by the media? If that's the case, what is your strategy, or what are you looking at it so that even in rural areas, human rights violations are covered? Thank you.
On We'll take up one more question.
Good morning to you all. My name is Andrew Big. My name is Andrew Pikiti, prosecutor from Lundazi, also representing Chasefu and Lumezi. I've been prosecuting for the past 20 years. I've prosecuted here in Lusaka, Livingstone, Sesheke, Kalomo, and now I'm in Lundazi. In my past 20 years, in places I've worked, I've seen schools being built, clinics, but I've never seen correctional facilities being built. And the challenge that we have right now in where I work from, we have one correctional facility, Lundazi. We've got jurisdictions like Chama. They don't have a correctional facility. It's about 160 kilometers away. And we always conduct prison visitations regularly, at least every 2 months. And the problem there has been that the complaints are that those who have been brought from Chama, places like Chama, they don't take them back. And also we found that in these same correctional facilities, we have juveniles being remanded together with adults. My question is, what is the Human Rights Commission doing about all these? Are they not aware of these prevailing situations in these jurisdictions? Thank you.
Yes, you can go first. You can take up. Yes, you can take up the first one. Okay, sure.
I'll take the Samfia prosecutors question, like what are we really doing about all these things to curb all this violence? We have enough laws, really, in Zambia. We have enough laws. But I think the problem is on the prosecuting part of it and the execution of these laws. In this violation of human rights, in these elections, you will find properties are damaged. There's a law on malicious damage. People are maimed. There's a law on assault. People are killed. There's a law on murder. So I think we have enough laws. But the question is, which I'll throw to the prosecutors, what is it that we can't curb this vice? As I said, going by all I dated from the first by-election in Mazabuka sometime in 1998, to date, if you are to go in these prisons, the people you find there are petty thieves. They store a chicken, Menzobema Mbanje, smoking dagger. Those are the people you find. But perpetrators of political violence, they are not there. I would really recommend that there's need to strengthen independent judicial systems, enforcing accountability of perpetrators. As I said, we don't follow up. They would write about a case, but you don't follow up. I'm sure even my case in Inamala, people in Zambia, they don't know how it ended. Probably some, they even think I served jail term. So there's need for this accountability of perpetrators to follow up the cases. Protecting civic space, it's important. And ensuring the independence of electoral management bodies. You've heard me in my discourse. I talked about the abuse of incumbency, which should not be the case. I hope I answered your question adequately. It's the prosecutors, they've got a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were very good questions in terms of overall what is the Human Rights Commission doing. I think I'll answer the three questions. Firstly, broadly, there is urgent need for us in the country to promote a culture of human rights. And this is the mission of the Human Rights Commission. We want to be at the center of encouraging individual responsibility for our society to move towards a culture of building human rights throughout the country. Then secondly, when we look at the constitutional mandate of the Human Rights Commission, we have mandate to promote and protect human rights throughout the Republic of Zambia. Now, the questions that are coming from Lundazi, Chama, and is it Samfia? These are real questions. And as a commission, we have deliberately been saying that human rights are not just in Lusaka. What we mean is that we have provincial officers in all the 10 provinces of the country. Non-availability of correctional facilities. I may inform you here that we have been through an internal process of collaborating with justice sector institutions, among them the Zambia Correctional Facilities. The Human Rights Commission under the Human Rights Act is empowered as one of its key functions to monitor places of detention, to understand the nature of the offenses that have been committed for people who are incarcerated. I think now as the election season is around, we're going to see these already overstretched facilities are going to be even further overstretched because of offenses that will be election related. One of the challenges that we have is that the correctional facilities we have throughout the country have not been built in line with the rise in population over the years. So that is a general infrastructural problem that we have brought to the attention of central government, and we have seen the building of a few new facilities across the country, but they are far from being adequate. In terms of the provision of facilities within the existing facilities, and in terms of the shortage of availability of facilities, it is a key problem that the Commission is constantly working on. It is indeed very concerning that in Lundazi, children are being incarcerated in the same facilities as other offenders. It's also something that we are following up within the judicial circles, within the implementation format of the Children's Code Act, and from the strictly human rights perspective. So those concerns are already receiving our attention, but as you can see, there is not much we can do in terms of expediting the process of building the infrastructure. But we have made note and approached the necessary officers in terms of how we would want to see human rights protected for all people. And as we go towards elections, as I've already mentioned, we are heightening in, interaction with all the different players, also promoting the issues of dialogue, mediation, so that during the election we can find interventions that do not lead to more people being sent to places of detention, correctional facilities, which are already overcrowded. So in terms of my initial comment, those are the few that I can make.
Thank you, Doc. We'll take up 2 more questions. I can see a hand to my left. I can see one hand to my left and another to my right. Ushers, could you please help out as quickly as we can?
Good morning. My name is Salome Tembo, Senior Public Prosecutor, NPA Headquarters. My question is directed to Dr. Sambo. On our first day of our conference, we heard from the gender division that they had received several reports of female aspiring candidates being harassed for aspiring to be adopted in various political parties to stand as candidates. Has your office taken interest, or will your office take interest in such reports to ensure that these female candidates, their rights to participate in this year's general elections are protected? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Musa, Senior Public Prosecutor, Chingola. I'll first start to comment, then I'll propose a recommendation from the representation. I think it will not be helping our nation to finger point who's to blame, who's doing what. I've liked the presentation from Kenya, how they do all the recommendation. When they identified the problem, then they worked on they tried to find a solution, how best they can resolve the problem. But I think in Zambia the problem we have is we haven't really identified the real problem. If we have identified, then we don't want it to face the reality so that we can resolve the problem. Honorable Weji, you have mentioned the issue of the incumbents being a problem. You are the incumbents. What is it that you are doing? How do you help the presidency and his government to execute and do the right things in terms of when there are these problems? The police belongs to the executive. So if there are problems, the police, they are not arresting other people, they are not doing certain things. How do you come up with the police which will make the police do the right thing? The incumbents, really as prosecutor many times, we are put in an awkward position. Either, as you are saying, you have identified those people who are prosecuting you. They are really doing the right thing by prosecuting, because That is their job. They have been employed to. But the problem was who investigated, who did what, who was behind all those prosecutions. And at the end of the day, you discover that it's you, the politician, who are behind that. There are certain things which, when you are in opposition, you don't see them to be wrong. You are the incumbents, you see certain things to be right. That's where the problem is. Even when it comes to the human rights office, there are certain let's assuming these opposition leaders who've been arrested, former ministers who've been arrested. How often is the human rights department see that their rights, these people, are not violated? It's like all government institutions at the end of the day, they work as partisan, and this is where we have lost it. If we can try to see that, it's better I'm being fired for doing the right thing than to try to see where is the master listening, what does he want me to do. If we are able to be independent, be ready to be fired for doing the right thing, then we'll be okay and Zambia will be a safe place for all of us. I thank you.
Sure. We'll allow our distinguished speakers to respond to the questions.
It's good to interact. Thank you, NPA, for this conference. That's a very good question. It's a very, very, very good question. abuse of incumbents. Twofold. We are in power. What are we doing? The other side of it, the previous government, what were they doing? Actually, thirdly, it has to start with us to change the scenario. I talked of abuse of incumbency, and maybe let me repeat myself just for a second. If you recall, in 2016, here at Mulungushi, at the National Totaling Center, we had an incident where an intruder went into the saver. Who gave access to that intruder to go in the saver? Isn't it abuse of incumbents? Prosecutors was that intruder prosecuted accordingly. Because even just to be allowed to sit in that totaling center, you must be accredited. Was that intruder accredited to be in the saver? The answer is no. Fast forward, we are in power. What is it
but in the same breath, would like to call upon the perceived victims in those situations to please come to us and give us further detail that the Human Rights Commission can act on. In my presentation, I did allude to the new powers that the Commission has under the Human Rights Act of 2024 of managing strategic litigation. This, again, is one of the issues that can be earmarked depending on the outcome of active investigations that the Commission can carry out once given some of the pointers. However, just from the media reports, we have taken note. I'll take this opportunity again to mention that the Commission is empowered to investigate cases on their own motion. For instance, what we have seen in the media, if it is bordering on human rights issues as it is something the Human Rights Commission picks up actively. Also, we depend on you individuals, institutions, to bring to our attention issues that we can follow up within the investigative powers that we have. And once we establish as a fact that certain issues bordering on violation of human rights have transpired, we do actively take up, and I cannot re-emphasize how glad we are as a commission that we now have these quasi-judicial functions and ability to carry out court cases, which were previously not in existence at the time that former Honorable Minister was suffering some of the issues that she has presented to us. So with these added powers, we look forward to a better day of human rights in the country. And before I leave the podium, I just want to restate that human rights is the preserve of each one of us. If we see human rights violations occurring and we suspect that the Human Rights Commission is doing nothing, please prod us. Please get in touch with us on our toll-free line 8181 so that at least you will have a basis and say you have presented a case that merits investigation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We've come to the end of our discussion. Very interesting topic indeed, and I believe our speakers have done justice to this topic. Another round of applause as our speakers leave the podium. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to recognize the presence of town clerks and council secretaries that are present. We appreciate your presence. Our tea is ready. We'll be breaking off for tea. And we are expected to be back by 11:25. Please take note of the time. We'll allow the Leonard DPP with his delegation to leave before we can go outside for our tea. Thank you so much.
Just go see I'm there. We can go with Mike. We can go. It's done? Are you done? Another one? Like the full one. A suit of forwards, that's all. That's fine. Sharp. People who
You are kindly requested to make your way to the conference room.
You can start even without the big, yeah.
Maybe we should wait for him.
But he's saying strictly.